This podcast is the sole property of Proud Sports. Our thoughts and opinions are our own.
Yeah. They say I walk like a king, talk like a king. You can act around now, say the same thing. They chasing the fame, they all want the name, but they ain't got what's running through these veins. Say I walk like a king, talk like a king. You can act around now, say the same thing. They chasing the fame, they all want the name, but they ain't got what's running through these veins. Make way for the king.
In celebration mode for this Proud Panthers podcast. I'm Beck here with you from Teed Off Sports and teedoffsports.com. Of course, appreciate all those that support both platforms. This is the podcast home, everything High Point University basketball, and our Panthers get a win 79-73 over Presbyterian in South Carolina to close out the regular season. So we celebrate for that, but we've got lots of other reasons to celebrate. So we'll jump off into those. Although now with like a whole week's time before our first round game in the Big South tournament in Johnson City, we can kind of kick our feet up for a second because we get the fortunate bye here to end the regular season while the rest of the Big South will be playing on Saturday. But I still feel like there's a lot that we just need to drill home. And sadly, I'll have to hearken back a little bit to parts of the season that maybe some of us High Point fans have tried to forget. So all of that coming up here shortly, but first, the business.
High Point University, the premier life skills university, is ranked the #1 best-run college in America by the Princeton Review. Employers value HPU's real-world preparation. Students love unprecedented access to global leaders on High Point's inspiring campus. And parents appreciate HPU's God, family, and country values. Choose to be extraordinary at High Point University.
I am Beck, and I'm back here on the Proud Panthers podcast. High Point 79-73 win in Clinton, South Carolina to finish off the regular season, a season with 27 wins that I hesitate to say it, but I think it's the truth. A lot of us High Point fans are kind of reaching some spoiled territories again. We're probably just validating what most of the counterparts in the Big South Conference already think about anybody and everybody associated with High Point. It's like, man, there's just all a bunch of spoiled people over there. Well, yeah, I mean, 3 straight years being the regular season champ in the Big South Conference and having a first-year head coach win 27 games. I want to congratulate Coach Clayman, certainly on this season, the regular season. I know there's still work left to be done, but also equally congratulate him on the extension. We haven't been together here on the podcast since that announcement was made. So much deserved. I think Dan Hauser, also Dr. Cobain, I think that they first off appreciate the success and the continuity, and no one that I guess looks at the full scope in an honest manner. Now there's a lot of like opposing team fans that you just can't trust for that. But if you look at everything honestly, then you can't guarantee this type of success. You can't, even though you can spend all the amounts of money, you can, yes, stick with a coach that was already a part of the system. You can try to work with all the different variables to end up in the position that we're in, but there's really no guarantee. That's why you go out and play the games. things like injuries and other stuff happen. Shoot, just ask Winthrop. They lose to Charleston Southern in part, but I think a large part due to the fact that Logan Duncombe sustained some type of injury in and around that game. I didn't directly follow the game. I didn't watch it. So maybe they lost for other reasons as well. But as I stated the last podcast episode, and you can go back and listen and dive deep into the Winthrop Eagles, but I really feel like that team goes as far as their MVP, Logan Duncombe, and the realistic, actual, factual favored whistle that he is receiving from Big South officials will take them. So even when you feel like you got everything figured out, other variables can pop up and kind of snake bite you a little bit. So the success that we had this season, it wasn't guaranteed. Don't let anybody fool you, even your own brain. If you just kind of kick back and say, well, yeah, that was just, anybody can kind of do that. No, it doesn't work that way. There's been a lot of buttons that have had to been pushed. If we just rest on the Cam Fletcher story alone and managing and working through the dynamics of what that whole relationship, I'm sure, has been like for the team and the coaching staff and the whole program. If you just look at that alone, the job that has been done on that is elite. And so the contract extension for Coach Clayman, very well deserved. I personally am a big fan of Flynn. He has been so gracious to this podcast and to me since the very start. Honestly, I want to get into the game, but I just have to say, when I launched off this podcast, and I have a background, I have a history in sports media and in radio and doing some of the different things, but I was just getting back into it. And I didn't really know what expectations would really result to. And I honestly, I didn't know how receptive the team and the personnel around it would really be. And now I sit here and I would say, man, I really appreciate the relationship I've developed with Flynn. But on top of that, I would say that I really feel like he is assisting us with this podcast into building something really special going forward. And there's some big plans that I have with this and working with the team and making things better and more elite and trying to, again, the whole ultimate goal here for me is just strictly trying to promote, broadcast, and highlight our athletics department, yes, but primarily the basketball program that, well, it's been on the rise, but it deserves to be even greater, even higher, just with the coverage and how much attention is brought to it. So lots there to think about. And I am certainly appreciative that we have a staff that Coach Clayman has developed. I hope all of that can remain and stay, consistent as they're moving forward with this contract extension as well. But High Point gets their final regular season win, 79-73. We finished the season 27-4. Just a couple of blips on the schedule that, again, when you isolate them, yeah, those seem like, each one of them had factors that I know we addressed here and seemed like there was some concerns and things in there. But I have a feeling from now, and I hope throughout the Big South tournament, you're going to hear me say a lot that this is something we could be and should be thankful for. Can't take these times right now for granted. I really genuinely felt that way a season ago because I knew what type of historical run that we were on, and you win that tournament the way that we did against Winthrop, coming back from so far behind. I watched them do it against App State in the field house in Greensboro. Really, the semifinal game felt very much that way, to escape out of that one. And there was just so many things as a part of that. And now I sit here today after we have been at our pinnacle, victorious championship level again. And I say, man, we have to appreciate where we're sitting today. If you're a High Point fan, just don't take that for granted. Last night, when High Point was taking on Presbyterian, this game is a sneaky difficult game. It is a national TV game. It's in the Cracker Box gym that Presbyterian has. Them, Charleston Southern, Upstate. You got to imagine it's hard to really feel like you're in a big-time environment. And then once you get in there and everybody's right on top of you, it's a little raucous, I'm sure. Add into all that we realize if we win, then we lock up a couple of these, regular season championship, number 1 seed overall. This is our first year, first time working to get our head coach this type of success. So there's a lot about that already that seems to be concerning, and you just got to caution a little bit with that. Add into that, though, the type of caliber coach that I feel like Quentin Farrell is, and how he always has his team ready. I know particularly there was a time where, and I know that the broadcast was making some comments on it, but we kind of popped out and transitioned our defense into a 2-3 zone. Just kind of throw a different look at Presbyterian, see what they do with that. And in what seemed like a flash, there was a backdoor cut with an alley-oop flying out of nowhere that Presbyterian converted against our 2-3 zone that made it look like they had been running that play religiously to be prepared. And that's how boom, smooth it seemed. And I really just feel like Quentin Farrell is that type of guy. He's that type of coach where he really looks in at all the details. The other thing they talked about in the broadcast is one of his favorite players to watch on High Point is Terry Anderson. Well, that should tell you something as well about Quentin Farrell. It means that he doesn't just look for the flashy stuff. And now this season for Terry, you could say, yeah, he's got some numbers and stats to, kind of jump off the paper at people. But nah, I still think it takes somebody that can really watch and know ball and know a thing or two, as opposed to just being kind of casual about things. And I give a lot of credit to the way that Quentin Farrell has his guys set, ready to play. They always play hard, put up a difficult battle. And so that's why this game in particular, all of that is a difficult one going in. What I really, really was impressed with was ultimately 2 to 3 players that elevated and stepped up and did things that we needed them to do. But also, we can't forget at times in this season, we have had a hard time closing games. If you go back and you remember SIU, we failed to convert at the end of the half that game. We failed to convert at the end of that game, and it ended up leading to an unfortunate turnover layup that, that was the final points on the scoreboard. But there was a lot in that. I realized that you could also point to and say, hey, this, and this, we screwed it up everywhere. But we couldn't close. That's for sure, that game. App State, I sat in that Lenore-Rhine facility, and I felt like, if we can't hit free throws and we come out flat like this at the start of halves and we're just shooting self-inflicted wounds into ourselves to dig such a deep hole and battle back and even get into overtime of that game was a struggle. It was a battle the whole way through, but it should have never gotten there. We just couldn't close. And so now there's been a few times over, the past, I'd say, final quarter of this season where we've had to battle and fight through to close some games. Winthrop was one of those deals. This one against Presbyterian was one of those deals. If you want to go all the way back to the last time that we faced Presbyterian, that was a close and tough battle. So we've had a few times later in the back half of the conference portion that you got to realize has been obvious growth there. So I want to acknowledge that. And that is something I hope would be applicable again to a conference tournament where we don't get this fortunate ladder setup, a bracket that only has us winning a couple of games. We got to play 3 no matter what. If we want to be where we want to be at the end of it, you got Friday, you got Saturday, you got Sunday. Ironically, all of those actually at 12 o'clock, just for informational purposes too. So closing games, tight windows, stressful, anxious, pin-up moments. To be able to check those off and say we got to win is an important thing. There's still mistakes things. There's still little bits that have to be buttoned up. And that's what I would say for this next week, over a week between now and we tip off at 12 o'clock in the Big South tournament. We got a whole solid week where we should be working on those little buttoned up things. Back at the Winthrop game, there's a pass made to Cam, I believe it was. Ball, goes right. He kind of alligator armed it, goes right through his hands. Could have been an easy dunk. Much easier margin to finish off that game. Against Presbyterian, there was a moment where we kind of break a press. Presbyterian's not fouling for whatever strange reason because the time is quickly disintegrating off the clock. And a pass goes towards Braden, and he attempts a layup, and it rims off. Those are little, like, boom, boom, closing plays that still have to be buttoned up. But overall, the result is growth. The guys, though, on this roster, for this game, that ultimately made the impact plays to really change things were Owen, Cam, and Chase. Terry has really done his job the whole season, even again on what I'll quantify as a quote-unquote off night for him, 5 of 14 shooting. He plays 32 minutes. He gets 6 rebounds, which is just one less of our leading rebounder for the game. And he's just making little hustle plays throughout. So I almost have to just wash, rinse, and repeat on Terry. But on those other 3 guys, Owen, I shared last episode, has elevated his defensive game now to where he is a dangerous shot eraser around the basket. And he did that again against Presbyterian. But just his abilities to stay aggressive, a little chippy, honestly, is something that we need throughout really other areas of this roster. I know I was calling hard for it from Caden, from Josh, or from Yusuf. Like, guys, you got an opportunity here. When Owen goes out, Cam isn't, at the games right now. We need extra depth. Somebody step up. I'm asking for those guys to really find that chip and be like, okay, I'm Yusuf. I'm going to go out and do my role here and play that. Or I'm Caden. I'm going to, grow into that quickly here and realize and seize the opportunity. Well, I know now that Owen's own chippy and development has made up for a lot of those requests. I'd still love that depth play, but he's just doing it on both ends now. Whereas at the start of the season, it was probably extra passive on the offensive end, and on the defensive side, it was solid. It just wasn't as elevated as where he's grown to at this point. And that is a super important factor, keeping him out of foul trouble as we get into the Big South tournament. Cam, this roller coaster of a season for him, has entrenched, I would say, hustle plays in him. Wild card style personality, little bit free-willing, wouldn't probably have made the style of play that, again, he made in the Presbyterian game, where he's backing up, keeping a player in front of him, and swats a shot, deflects it away. And it goes right back to those deflections that he made against Winthrop out towards half court, where he is just riding the opposing offensive player, forcing them to fumble the ball around. Just getting involved, staying present, because I realize that the whole season hasn't played out probably the way he would like it to. Well, and that's the easy transition right to Chase. I'm sure this season hasn't played out the way Chase at the start said, that's the way my year's going to go at High Point. I'm going to start every game. I'm going to have a huge role every game. I'll have 20 plus, 30 plus minutes every game. Last night, he only had 8 minutes. But in those 8 minutes, when a High Point team was teetering with failure, we were right there at the edge of having Presbyterian with enough momentum. They had already had like a 19-7 run, may have been worse than that, and it's a tie ball game. Chase gets inserted, and that veteran, no moments too big, I'm going to shoot my shot. I know what I do and what I bring to the table. I'm not going to hang my head. Nothing really here is what I had planned on it being. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be 4 or 5 from the 3-point range, completely change the dynamic of the way the game is ending. It allowed us to get enough of a separation to dribble the ball out, delete time off the clock, not have to force and do some things that otherwise in a tight game could have easily played out in a depressing way. That here I'd sit and we would all be upset with, like, that's the way we ended the season. Now we're going into the Big South tournament with a blown tire, lost in Clinton, and strife. That would have been a recipe for a big disaster. And so those 3 guys and what they were able to do, I didn't mention the stat line of Cam, so I will just reference it real quick, though. 4 of 6 shooting for him with 9 points, but the 5 rebounds right up there with Terry and Owen in that department. I mean, all those guys with those kind of plays, with the growth that we've seen here, now we have a week of self-improvement, of study, but also what I don't want to happen. And this is the part where I referenced all the way back at the start of the episode that we would probably have to revisit, and some of us Panthers fans don't want to go there, but it's the truth. We've had other stretches in this season with fortunate buys where we've had pauses, we've had rest breaks for a week, even longer. And when we've come out of those, we've had varying results. It's like, okay, we know we've got App State coming up on the 14th of December. We just beat NJIT on the 5th of December. And when we came out against App State, as I already said, we looked flat. We looked off. Something was a little awry there about that. We go into parts of our conference play where before we played at UNC Asheville, we had played Pfeiffer and Bryant, yes. If anybody was at those games where it was 93-47 and 123-64, they really don't amount to be a whole lot of anything. And I felt like in the first half and parts of that UNC Asheville game, we looked a little flat. What I will be doing during that stretch is looking forward to catching up with Coach Clayman, some players. We're going to get set and ready for the Big South tournament in Johnson City, and I'll also be out there with the Proud Panthers podcast and Teed Off Sports, so I hope that you'll follow along with us at that, with more interviews, special podcast episodes, plenty of, we'll say, the full court coverage on our High Point team's run. Hoping for much of the same that Johnson City treated us to last year. Looking forward to being down there. So anybody that is making the trip, certainly reach out and would love to try to catch up. Until then, we'll catch you on a Monday edition of the Proud Panthers podcast, where we start to bring you more of this content as High Point prepares for that tournament coming up.